with his presentation.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As Jordan said, my name is Cory Stroup, Lieutenant, City of Xenia Fire Division down in Greene County. I also want to throw a thank you out to Schwartz Contracting. They're the ones that are letting us host these every month. So big kudos to them. The huge proponents of the fire service up in the Allen County area. Very beneficial for us to be able to do these programs. So with that, we'll jump right into the presentation. If you have questions as we go along, hit them up in the chat box. Jordan will be monitoring that. When I go to share my screen, I won't be able to see the chat box. So if you got a question, send it there, and then he'll chime in. He'll be chiming in on a couple spots as well on some things that are a little more applicable to his area. And then if there's any questions at the end, after last month, if you stuck around after Jeffrey's presentation, there was a handful of us that sat around and talked about the fire service for another, 30, 40 minutes. Was very beneficial as well. All right, everybody can see that?
Yep.
All right, so when Jordan reached out and asked me about putting together something, kind of a setting expectations, setting standards kind of thought process, and it was going to follow up after the one that Jeff did last month, if you were able to tune in for that one, where he kind of talked about the mindset and kind of preparing for promotion and getting your mind right. So this is kind of the natural succession to that. And as I am a company officer, that's going to be the kind of theme that I speak from, because that is where my experience comes from. I do have experience as a volunteer as well. I did that for about 7 years back in the mid 2000s. And we did do some company culture-based changes at that organization as well. So if you're a volunteer and you're listening in, these same things will apply to you as well. A little disclaimer that I need to throw out for our organization's policies, that the views here are my own and not necessarily a reflection of the City of Xenia or the Xenia Fire Division. So when we talk about making this cultural change, we talk to people across the fire service and they talk about wanting to change their culture. They kind of start talking about, we want to change the culture at a departmental level. And they start to try and make some changes from the top down. And unless you have a really motivated or dedicated fire chief, like the Scott Thompsons of the world, a lot of times we kind of hit a brick wall with trying to start from the top and working our way down. So where I have found success is working this at the company level and then working that way up and spreading it horizontally across the organization from each company, that's each station, each shift, each crew, and then working from there. So I have influence with the guys that I work with every day, but not necessarily guys that are at a different station on another shift. So what I've done, and with my guys and getting their buy-in to create the culture at the company level that we want, and we've been able to extend some of that across the organization. We'll talk about some wins that I've seen in our organization throughout this program. So that's a list of what we're going to talk about tonight over the next hour, hour and a half or so. Who can make these changes. We'll talk about developing those standards, defining expectations, how I kind of view the difference between standards and expectations. We'll talk about building some trainings to kind of drive home those, and then a little bit of leadership stuff at the end that kind of wraps it into how all this equates out to fireground success. So there's just a picture of some guys that were on my company at the time. This is from a couple of years ago. This was after a training. I think taking pictures is important. It builds those memories. It's part of that thing that builds that culture. 5 years ago, if you would have walked into one of our fire stations, there weren't many pictures on the wall. There wasn't a lot of that history being shown, versus if you come in now, we keep current pictures up in the day room, and we have some older historical photos back in the training room. We've got some stuff that highlights line of duty deaths we had in 1908. So I think it's important to take pictures and then, put those up around your firehouse. So who can develop this culture? Like I said, I'm going to speak from the company officer aspect, but it could be any of us. It could be a brand new firefighter in a volunteer organization or a part-timer, all the way up through the senior guy, the officer. If there's any chiefs watching, I commend you for that. Um, it doesn't have to be an officer or that designated leader of a crew. You could go out as a firefighter on your own and start doing these things. And ultimately, it's going to lead somebody else saying, well, what's going on out there in the bay? You know, why is Jimmy out there? Well, he's cranking away on his forced entry door at 6 o'clock at night. You know, what's going on with that? And someone else will lead out, and that'll bring another person out. So it doesn't have to be just that officer, that senior guy. And it doesn't matter what your pay status is either. Any of us can start to develop a culture. Standards and expectations. These are the Webster definitions. Standard being an idea used as a measure, a norm, or a model. And the expectation is a strong belief that something will happen. When I think of standards and expectations, I think of standards as being more objective. One of the ones we're going to talk about is like mask up times. And so when I talk about setting a standard for what I expect with mask up times, that's an objective measure that should be able to be met every time. An expectation are more subjective. So in this scenario, here's what I would like to see happen, but understanding that there may be other things outside of our control that throw a monkey wrench into that, and then laying out the expectation of, okay, what happens in that sense as well. We're going to go through tonight and we're going to talk about some of the standards and expectations that my crew has developed. And what I want you guys to kind of think on though is, you know, standards and expectations that should apply to your organization. So my organization runs 3 people on an engine company. Our ladder company is cross-staffed with a medic. We're like most, you know, small suburban departments. We ran just shy of 6,000 calls this year, 2020, with the COVID slowed down a little bit. We were above 6,000 in 2019. Most of those are for the ambulance. So we're not out chasing fires every day. We don't have big city staffing. You know, we don't get 4 people on an engine. We aren't even guaranteed to get the ladder truck. If the medic crew from Station 1 is out on a call, the ladder truck isn't going to respond. So we don't build our standards and expectations with the expectation that we're going to get a 4-person ladder company. If your organization has that, then you should build these for yourself. So we'll talk about the ones that we use, but you guys shouldn't take those, you know, as we talk about them tonight. You got to think about what fits your station, your run volume, your jurisdiction, those kinds of things. You may already be following some standards, and hopefully you know it. You know, there are national standards out there. NFPA puts standards out through thousands of volumes of material. If your department is accredited, you should be very familiar with those standards because you're required to meet them and report on them. My organization, we are not accredited, but I've talked to some places, some folks that are. You know, those standards are put out and they have to meet those. And there are folks train on those. The only thing you got to be careful with those is we have to get the why behind the standards. And a lot of times we don't get that with the national standards because we're not involved in that decision-making process. So if you're one trying to push for this cultural change and you're relying on these national standards, you've got to dig deep into the why these standards were written and what's the benefit for us in the fire service to follow those standards. Because we don't want folks following standards just because we say there's a standard. We want them to do it because this is better for the citizens that we swore to protect. It's better for our fellow firefighters. Your department has standards. These are going to be written up through policies or standard operating procedures, standard operating guidelines. For the intents and purposes of the training tonight, we're going to kind of focus on the bottom 2 bullets there and not so much the top 2. Those may already be set for us. And while those are good standards, what I'm talking about is going to be going above and beyond those. So your personal standards and your crew standards. So we're going to do some things or talk about some things. You know, if you're going to set standards for your crew, you better make sure that you can do them yourself. I think it was Sean Duffy put a post out the other day on Facebook talking about instructors that expect their students to do things, but they don't get out and show them how it's done. So if you're going to set standards for your crew, then your standards for yourself should be even higher than what they are for your crew. Here's some examples of some standards. The top bullet there, the turnout times. This is an example of both the national standard and a departmental standard that my organization uses. This is from NFPA 1710, and it's in my departmental policy for our response policy. This was copy and pasted, right out of 1710, that the policy of the division to respond to all fire alarms within 80 seconds and EMS calls within 60 seconds, at least 90% of the time. So I don't worry about, making this an extra standard. I don't try and do anything above and beyond this, because when we're talking about standards, they have to be realistic. Right? So it'd be nice to come in and say, all right, we should be able to respond to fire alarms within 30 seconds, but that's not possible, to achieve 90% of the time. So this is a pretty good set standard. So we're not going to talk a lot about those because they're already set. We're going to talk about things that you're going to go above and beyond for your crew that are specific to what you and your folks are doing or your organization. Some of the examples we'll talk about tonight that my crew uses: mask up times, stretch of lines, some response guideline stuff, and then we'll look at some writing assignments. So the first example is mask up times. Hopefully you have a standard for yourself for your mask up time. When we talk about residential fires in the United States, if you're following anything that Brian Brush is putting out and the things that they're doing with the firefighter rescue survey and tracking how many rescues are happening, there are multiple rescues every day happen in the American Fire Service. And we hear all the time, we don't do fires anymore. Fires are down. Well, what's still up is civilian deaths in fires and civilian rescues in fires. So we want to be able to respond as quick as we can. Now, we cannot make up much time in the streets. We can't control what's going on once we go en route, what the traffic flow is, how busy that is, what the weather conditions are. So where we can make up that time is responding quickly to the trucks and getting geared up and ready to go. And then once we get on scene, we can speed those things up by being efficient in deploying lines, deploying ladders, having our assignments laid out already. And one of those other things is masking up quickly. So the ultimate standard for my crew is less than 20 seconds. Now, I don't really care how they get there. I don't micromanage if they need to come off with their gloves on, or if they do it with one glove on, or if they don't start with gloves on. If they can get in under 20 seconds, I'm happy with that. This is a drill that we frequently practice. You can see down there in the pictures on the bottom, one of the guys, Mikey, he's watching the presentation tonight. That's him there. This is something him and I practice quite a bit. We just gear up, walk over to the side of the engine, and we can practice it. And we practice it multiple times. The idea is not to get it under 20 seconds once and then quit. The idea is that you should be able to do this in under 20 seconds in a multitude of different conditions. Walking up to the scene, if the house is set back, if it's close, weather conditions, all those things come in play. You want this to be second nature. This is something that I work on some variation of this every morning. I just bought some Firedex gloves because before I was using a different glove and I could not get it under 10 seconds. So I bought some Firedex gloves, and that's my new goal for myself, is to get it under 10 seconds consistently. So now when I come to work and I check off my SCBA in the morning, I have my gloves sitting there, and I always put my gloves on to put my mask on to check it out. So sometimes I run through the whole thing. Sometimes I just work on putting my mask on, but I always work on some variation of that.
Cory, what was the brand of chin strap that you recommended us to buy?
It was a leather chin strap. So we got ours from Fully Involved Leather, but there are multiple manufacturers of just any leather chin strap. They're longer, so I wear the Phoenix TL2 leather helmet, and it comes with the standard cloth chin strap that was short. So when I take my helmet off and I put it back, I was obstructing me from being able to grab my hood. We wear the Inotech, cancer preventative hoods, and the head opening is really constricted on those. So I was having a hard time. That was what was messing me up with my gloves. So with that helmet there, I couldn't get my hand in there. So we bought these leather ones that are longer, and that enables me to throw my helmet back a lot farther. And which I have a video of that. So as we talked about, when you're looking at these standards, you should be able to do these yourself. So it was our rookie's first or second shift here a couple of weeks ago. This was the day that I got these Firedex gloves. So I wanted to practice with those and see if this plays. So that was not my first time trying this. We went through it a couple times, but I think at like 11.86 seconds on the one that was videoed here. So I'm still working. I still want to get better. I still want to get under 10 consistently. But you could see my method. I've got the Scott AV 3000 high temp face piece, so it's got 5 straps. I keep 4 of those pre-tight. Only the bottom right is loose. I do the bottom right because my helmet also gets tightened on the right, so everything is over there. When I come off the truck, I'll have both gloves on. I'll just throw my helmet back. My cylinder's already on. I'm pretty religious about checking my air pack in the morning, so I know it's not going to leak any air. All the valves and everything are shut. Put the mask on, tighten up one strap, pull the hood up. I'm right-handed, so I'll try and get my right hand in there to get the hood up. And then once I kind of break that seal and get it up, I'll get my left hand up. The area that I struggle with the most is the bottom of my chin and making sure it's protected. So that's a point of contention for me to make sure I get that completely covered. And then helmet up, chin strap down, or tighten the helmet down. Next thing that we do, set the standard for, is stretching the first line. Now, when we're talking about stretching the line, this is our bread and butter residential fire in the city of Xenia, which we're going to run our cross lay. It's 200 foot of 1 3/4 hose. And we want that nozzle and that first coupling to the door, which gives us that 50-foot lead length. If your district is primarily commercial or longer, setbacks, things like that, and you need 100 foot at the door, then you need to adjust your standards accordingly. But for my district, we have a lot of short setbacks, 1,000 square foot slab residential structures. So 50 foot is plenty lead length for us. So the standard is that they should be able to stretch the cross lay to the target entrance, get it flaked out correctly by getting nozzle and coupling to the door, and then mask up in under 90 seconds. Now, when we set these standards, you've got to be able to be adjustable with these as well. So 90 seconds was the time that we picked just based off some trainings that we could do. But maybe we could get this better. I've been watching, if anybody's going to the Into the Job Fire Symposium out in Wichita later this year, I started watching some of their stuff on Facebook, and they drill it in their recruit academy to do the same thing in under 60 seconds. Now, they use a 2-person deployment model for their lines, whereas in our organization, we only get 1. But watching them is pretty efficient and pretty smooth. So that's something that we may work on. Can we get this under 75 seconds? Can we continue to make these standards a little bit better? The other thing, and I meant to talk about this with the mask up times, but maybe you've got that employee who just isn't there. Maybe so the standard is 20 seconds and maybe they just can't get it. And you say, well, what do you do with those folks? This is not a departmental standard. It's not a policy, right? You can't discipline them for that. What I do with them is I just keep them out training. So if they can't get it in under 20 seconds, I had a guy with his mask up time. The first time he did it was like 2 minutes. Obviously that is unacceptable. So we just kept working with him. And when we go out and train on it, he continues to train as well. So he's continuing to work on the standard. So you don't lower your standard. You got to keep them working towards that. but you build intermediate standards for them, because a lot of these folks will be discouraged and thinking that they will never be able to meet that. So build up that. So for him, we built up, the first step was, okay, let's get this under a minute. And then once he got it under a minute, it was, let's build it under 45 seconds. And then he was able to get it under 45. And then, okay, let's get it under 30. And you just continually to chip away at it over time. We're talking about response guidelines. So my organization, we weren't using any writing assignments at the time, which we are now. But our stance on automatic fire alarms was kind of laissez-faire. You had to put your bunker pants on, but from there it was kind of up to your company officer of what they wanted to do. And we had a lot of complacency towards automatic fire alarms. I think it was South Milwaukee the other day had a call come in as a fire alarm. They all geared out, dressed, ready to go. They rolled in. Apartment was well involved. Ended up being a fatal fire. So imagine that could have been much worse if their crews weren't prepared to go. So my crew set the standard that we wanted to be ready to go for these fire alarms. So any automatic fire alarm we get in, residential fire alarm, commercial fire alarm, we treat it as a fire. That's our standard. What can cause fire alarms? Fires. So we gear out completely. We come off the truck, tools in hand, SCBA's on. We follow the writing assignments that we now have set. So you can see there, the officer brings a tick and a hook. The jump seat firefighter brings a can and the irons. The other standard, kind of a substandard within this one that we set, is what our driver operators do. In the past, they would just hang out in the engine, and they were kind of the gopher. We make calls, say, well, we need an attic ladder, or we need this, or we need that, and they'd bring it to us. But a lot of times they would just sit in the engine, and maybe they're playing on their phone, they're on Facebook, they're playing games or whatever. So we set out and said, okay, how can we make this better? What can we do? So we now task them to get out. If it's a commercial fire alarm, if the building has an FDC, they go take a look at that. They take a look at our positioning. They say, okay, if this building was actually on fire, if it was on fire in different parts, where would I go park? Where would the most advantageous position to be? When they get to the FDC, we ask them to take the cap off. We're not like a big city. We don't get a lot of foot traffic downtown where people are shoving trash into FDCs and things like that. But some of the older ones have different locking mechanisms, different caps on it. So what better opportunity when you're sitting there with not a lot else going on while your crew's inside investigating to go take a peek at those. And then we ask them to do a 360 of the building. So we respond to a local college, and we have 2 dorms that we get frequent fire alarms to. And if you 360 the building, you'll note that there's a pretty steep hill on the back side of both buildings that from the front you wouldn't know. So we found that out through our driver operators getting out and doing these 360s of the building and taking a look and saying, hey, look at this. If we had to do a ground ladder rescue back here, we'd be in a tough spot in a couple places.
Cory, does your driver operators, do they put their bunker pants on, drive with their pants, or can they stay in their uniforms?
So for fire alarms, they stay in their uniforms. Well, we leave it up to them, but most of them stay in their uniforms. For residential fires, if it's something that is in our district and we know we're going to be first due, then I leave that up to them, and a lot of them won't. And then if we go to our reserve engine, almost nobody will because they don't fit. If we go to the other side of town, or if it's area that it's, kind of in between the 2 lines where either one of us can be first due, they put on their bunker pants, because if we're the second engine on scene, they don't stay out and they get assigned as that part of that crew.
Okay.
Okay, the next standard that we utilize is the flow and move. So we set the standard that one firefighter should be able to open the nozzle fully, advance on a hallway while flowing continuously without shutting down or gating back the nozzle. Right now, we're still using automatic nozzles. We're in the process of changing over our whole attack package to better hose and 7/8 inch smooth bores. So it will still be in that same flow range, around 160 gallons a minute. So this is, specific for our organization because, like I said earlier, there are 3 of us on the engine. So when we get into the building, there's going to be 2 of us on that line, the nozzle firefighter and then myself coming in as the officer behind them. Well, we don't have the luxury then of other people coming in to move hose around corners for us, or to search off the line, or to open up or search the fire area. So we expect our nozzle firefighters with our residential fire 1 3/4 package that they can move that line by themselves. If we get a 90-degree turn, I'm going to be stuck going back and either preloading hose into the hallway for them or managing that curve. So they need to be able to open this line, move down the hallway while they're flowing. We do this. This is a frequent, pretty easy drill. We've got a little propane fire training trailer that sits in our parking lot, and we can move walls around to make a hallway. And we kind of put all this together in the scenario, and they get in there and they open the line and they move it and they flow it down. The other thing that you'll want to train on with this is what are you going to do with your hand tools? And we'll talk about that a little bit more with the expectations. Here's a video of just that simple drill. You'll see the officer kind of standing feeding hose around the corner, but the firefighter opens the nozzle and then he moves down the hallway by himself to the fire room.
And guys, these are drills that you don't have to have a specific training trailer or site. You can set this up next to the firehouse and make a makeshift hallway with tables and things like that. When you do these trainings, you got to get kind of creative. Like, I understand budgets and things like that. So think outside the box when you're doing these, but stay relevant to your operations in your run district.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a drill that, at the end of the day, if you had to do it in a parking lot, you could get out and do it just for your nozzle firefighters to get the feel of that nozzle reaction coming back at them and being able to move down the hallway. And we actually used this drill in this scenario to kind of bring home the fact that we wanted the 7/8 inch tip, because we had some folks that were leaning towards the 15/16, because you get more gallons per minute. But some of our concern, myself included, was will our firefighters be able to move a 15/16 while flowing down the hallway? So we had Elkhart come out and we evaluated both nozzles, and all of our guys, or I would say most of our guys, were better suited flowing that 7/8 down and versus fighting the increased nozzle reaction of that 15/16. All right, so once you're done going out and flowing that, the next standard here is that your hose load should be clean and crisp and ready to go. This is a big thing for me. If you look at the picture here on the bottom left, there's a couple things wrong with this hose load. Currently, we're using a full Minuteman hose load. We shoulder all 200 feet and then go from there. So the problem with this is that this red hose is supposed to come off of the officer side of the vehicle, and the blue hose that's being pulled over here is supposed to come off the driver's side. All of our engines, this is actually a ladder truck, all the engines in a ladder truck are all designed the same way for consistency. The pump panel levers all line up, color-coded for that. So some crew came out and loaded this on, backwards. And then they also did it very sloppily. So we set the standard that we want our hose loads to be nice and crisp. They're all even as you go up. So you can see this one looks better. Now, they don't have to be parade ready, right? It doesn't have to, you don't have to take a vacuum and suck all the air out. You don't have to do it. I mean, this is a fire hose. But as we go to deploy this with this nozzle hanging down, these loops are uneven, and we're setting all this on our shoulder. You have different weights that are pulling at different areas as this hose flakes off. And this hose is not going to deploy as smoothly as one like this or this one, where they're stacked nice and neat. Now, in the beginning, I talked that It doesn't matter, what rank you are, what position you're in, to start pushing for these changes. So this picture on the right, this red hose over here, looks like a pretty good load. This was sent to me by a young firefighter on another shift. So he had done some training with us early on, and he bought into this philosophy as well. And then that philosophy started extending over into his shift. And I got multiple pictures from multiple people on that crew when they would get done loading hose, because they were proud of what they'd done and what it looked like. So this was a young firefighter that went over to another shift and pushed for that same change, and got those guys to buy in with the why behind it. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about expectations. And like I said earlier, the expectations are a little bit more subjective. So when you're detailing out expectations, either for yourself or with your coworkers or with your crew, if you're an officer, these are, okay, if this situation happens, this is what I expect, kind of thing. So there's a list of some of the examples that we've used with my crew. And the first one we'll talk about here is morning checks. So with both of these, with the standards, with the expectations, are you setting the example here? So my expectation for my guys is that they are ready to go whenever a fire comes in. So their gear should be set up. There should be no problems if a fire comes in at 7:05 in the morning after our shift change or at 10 o'clock at night. The expectation is that we are ready. Everything is set up. So when I get to work in the morning, I get there about 6:30, and then I come in, and the first thing that I get my gear, I set it out next to the truck. Some of our guys will take the off-duty person's gear off the rig. Some people don't like to do that. I don't like to do that. I like to let them get their own gear off. So I set it next to the truck. And then usually when I go find a person that I'm exchanging with, then they'll come take their stuff off. That's another benefit that our organization has for the most part. When we come to work, we know what position we're riding in. Some guys that are assigned to our ladder truck, they float around, they may change. So if you're in the volunteer organization, think about this in the same way. If your gear is kept, if you're keeping it in your vehicle, or if you keep it at the station, how is it deployable for when that fire call comes in? So when I go to put my stuff on a truck, I put my coat first on the hook, and then I put my radio strap up after that. I check my radio battery. I check my radio. I make sure that it's on the right channel, and I've got plenty of battery level. I step up, put my helmet up on the dash. My boots are set on the ground outside. I make sure that my suspenders are not tucked up underneath my boots anywhere. I don't flap my suspenders out and open just because there's not enough space between the engine and the ladder. So they stay flipped up on top of my pants so that I can easily flip them out when we're ready to go. My hood is tucked inside of my right boot. It's facing the right direction so that if we catch a call, I can simply throw it on. I hop up in the truck. We have our own SCBA mask and regulator. So I clip the regulator in. I check the mask on my SCBA strap, or I'll check the straps on my mask, and then I'll check the straps on the SCBA, make sure they're all loose. I found my SCBA in probably every condition you can think of, from low air, no air, unhooked, straps tight, straps wrapped around other things. So I always check all those things every morning. I am not the smallest guy, so if the person that wore it before me was smaller and they undid their waistband, their straps are probably going to be too tight for me. Then I will turn on the SCBA. I'll make sure that the release works. Our SCBA sits in the seat, so I make sure the release works. I'll turn the cylinder on, and then I turn it back off. I put my gloves on, then I put my mask on. I tighten up, make sure all the straps are tight. I take a couple small breaths, make sure that the vibrate alert works, let the pass alarm start working its way up to go off, make sure it works. And then we've got voice amps on our mask as well. I make sure it's good. My position generally calls for me to carry the hook and the tick. So I'll make sure that the tick is good. plenty of battery, make sure it's operating normal, and then make sure the New York hook is strapped down in the correct position. MDT is good to go, and then I put my name tag on the passport. So at the end, this is what my gear looks like. So boots ready to go, hood's facing the right direction, suspenders are not tucked underneath of my boots, so that if I go to pull them out, they get caught on anything. I wear my radio strap underneath of my coat, so that's why it is hanging on there, that I grab it first, and then I put my coat on. Now I hang my coat like this, and when I reach up to grab it, I spin it, but my rookie that started last week, he hangs his backwards. And so I've been watching him to see if that maybe shave a little bit more time off for me getting dressed as well. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. But once I put my coat on, then I step up in the rig. I'm meticulous about where these shoulder straps are, and that varies for the other lieutenants that I exchange with in the morning. So we all pretty much take the left shoulder strap and tuck it in this little spot right here, and then the mast sits over here on the doghouse. But this right strap, they like to take it and they put it behind the seatbelt up here in the same spot. Well, I don't like that because it takes the manual pass device and it can get slammed in the door. So I just tuck it down in here next to it, and then it's very easy for me when I get in the rig. I put my left arm through, I turn, and I just give a slight tug on it, and it will pop loose, and then I can put my right arm in, and then I put my seatbelt on over top of that. So this is my expectation. This is my expectation for myself. This is my expectation for my crew, that they're doing something similar. So if you are setting these expectations and you're not following it, right, then what kind of buy-in are you going to get for them? I had a guy tell me one time, he said, well, I really appreciate you checking your SCBA in the morning. And I was kind of taken aback. I didn't know if he was being sarcastic or what, but he said two of the places that he had worked, their officer made the firefighters check their APPAC as well. So don't be that person. Make sure you're checking off your own stuff. So does your stuff in the morning when you come in, does it look like this, or does it look like this? So this was somebody who is not on my crew anymore, but they were at the time when I took this picture. But you can see that this person is absolutely not ready to go. The inner liner is not connected to the outer liner. This is a tool belt. The radio is not ready to go. It's just been thrown up there. I can tell you that they did not check their SCBA that morning because their mask and regulator are still in this bag, not hooked up. So this person had come in and just thrown their gear on there and were just being complacent that, hey, we probably won't catch a fire today. So, when you're thinking about expectations, what have you set for your crew? Is this something that you want to allow, or is this the expectation that you have set for yourself? And are you willing to take that risk? We expect for our crews to recognize that nothing showing means nothing. And most of us here have probably been burnt by this before, whether we went in on a fire alarm or we went in on a call that came in as a fire, and we get there and the first company on scene reports nothing showing. So we instantly slow down or change our mindset. And we've got to get out of that mindset. We had one, I've got some pictures here in a second, but this is another example where we've started to make this push across our organization. A couple years ago, if this fire would have come in, it would have played out a lot differently, is my assumption. But in January, another shift got called in early January for a structure fire. And as they're en route, dispatch comes across and says PD is advising that they have extinguished it with a fire extinguisher. So in the past, we would have probably canceled most companies and just kept the shift commander and the first in engine responding in. And the first engine would have got there, they'd have come off the truck, they wouldn't have had tools, they'd probably still been wearing their gear, but they wouldn't have their air packs on, and they would have went in to see what was going on. Well, fortunately, we have expanded this culture that nothing showing means nothing across the whole organization. So this crew had the mindset of, it's not going to be out until we get in and investigate and determine that it's out. So they kept the units coming. The first engine went to the scene. I don't remember if the ladder truck made it out the door or not, but the second engine went in. They staged on the hydrant. The shift commander arrived, took command, and the first engine went in, and they went in investigation mode, which for us is they're geared out. Their SCBAs are ready to go. They've got tools, and they've got a can with them. Well, when they went inside, the fire had flared back up because after the cop hit it with an extinguisher, he went, oh man, it's really smoky in here and I can't breathe. So he went and opened all of the windows and the door. So fresh air comes in, a little bit of oxygenation, that fire in the kitchen flares back up. So that crew gets in the door. They're met with now even more smoke. They quickly mask up, go in with their can, and then put the fire out. So imagine if they wouldn't have had that mindset and they wouldn't have been able to go in because they weren't ready, didn't have their SCBAs on, or didn't have the can with them. So that was a win for our organization. One that my crew had, this was in November a couple years ago, right before these pictures were taken, a medic crew got on scene first and they sized up this building as nothing showing. So our crew having that mindset, the expectation that that does not mean anything, we continued everything coming in. And then when they went around and did the 360, they went, man, there's a light haze that looks like there's some smoke in there. This one had come in as a dryer fire. Well, what happens on most dryer fires? They're nothing, right? They get caught up in the dryer and it's not a big deal. Well, if we'd had that mindset here, this could have turned out much worse. When they did the 360, they saw smoke. They put lines on the ground. The second engine laid in from the hydrant. The ladder company got blocked out, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we got 2 lines in. We got searches started in quick succession on this fire that had extended from the dryer into the utility room and was coming down the hallway towards the kitchen. And they were able to stop it in that hallway and not extend it anywhere else. So I mentioned it a couple times already about the ladder truck. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ladder truck because how it relates to us, and then Jordan is going to chime in and talk a little bit about water tanker or tender shuttle operations and positioning those. So one of the things that we were historically bad about was getting our ladder truck in position. And most of the time we got away with it because a lot of our residential structures are small one-story residences. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the ladder truck is cross-staffed with the medic crew. The medic crew is what takes most of the calls. So our mindset was always, we need to get the ladder back in service so we can go get the medic back in service. And we had a fire on Christmas Day a couple of years ago. It was a relatively small fire. We get there, there's light smoke coming from the front door. There's enough smoke that we masked up, but we get in, and what it was, they had a candle. They set a candle next to the TV, caught the TV on fire, caught the dresser on fire. The family had taken the TV out, but there was still a little bit of smoldering stuff from the dresser. So we're in investigating. It's a story and a half structure. We're trying to make sure there's no extension or anything like that. And we put that ladder truck back in service right away. You know, once we realized that it was a small fire, to get the ladder back in service and get that medic back in service. So it was after that fire, I approached my captain at the time and proposed him with the idea and said, okay, what if on those types of incidents, we continue to allow the ladder truck to come in. And so he said, okay, I'm interested. What are you talking about? And so I said, well, you know, we don't do a good job of getting the ladder there. So, but we have the expectation that they'll be able to do it when needed, but we're not getting them much practice time and real world experiences. So I said, on those type of calls where we're going in and we're investigating and we're going to be there for a little bit to see what's going on, if we don't have another assignment for them, let's bring the ladder truck up, let them get in front of the building, let them actually put the outriggers out, turn it into a little training scenario for the ladder company. The second engine is going to stage on the hydrant. I said, where else are we going to be able to shut a street down and put them on an actual street in our jurisdiction with actual cars, obstructions, and things like that. So he said, you know what, I really like that idea. The next captain I worked for was on board for it. So we have that expectation now that on those call types, we expect that the shift commander is going to not put them back in service. And then we expect that ladder company to come in and position as they would. And then they're actually going to put the ladder up, check the scrub angle. It's one thing to come in position, but did it end up being the right position? So they'll put the ladder up and they'll check that out. We've had some success doing this as well. Now, the caveat with that is we're not going to do this every time. If you get there, we had one the other day that came in as a house fire and somebody was burning carpet in the backyard. So we don't expect that they're going to let the ladder truck to come in as we talk to a homeowner and tell them he can't burn carpet. But those ones where you've got a light haze or you've got an odor and we're going to have crews checking around for a while, those are the times that we bring that ladder truck in. All right, Jordan, take it away.
So kind of changing gears a little bit and talking about some of the rural operations, positioning. And Cory and I did a practice run of this the other night, and he mentioned something that a guy by the name Nick Martin talks about. Don't park your vehicle, position it. Positioning is for a tactical use. How many of us that are out in the rural have those really narrow roads and we set our tanker up? And if we don't set the dump tank and the tanker the right way, we screw our operation up. We prevent the capabilities of tankers driving by and offloading. We prevent the capabilities of stacking up other trucks to get close to the scene. What are your long lanes? You need to pre-plan this stuff. You need to think about it. Have those conversations. One thing that we do at my organization is we pull from the front majority of the time. So if we have the space, we're going to back our engine in, train on that. Think about those things. Always think 3 steps ahead. What is going to happen if plan A doesn't work? How am I going to recover from this? Because if you don't get that tanker operation set up right, the fire is done. Have options. Have a game plan. And the long lanes, those are the fires that will really screw you up out in the country. So just have a mindset on those.
Excellent points. All right. So if anybody watching was in the military, thank you for that, first and foremost. But the fire service takes a lot of things from the military. And one of the things that I've kind of taken from that is this, commander's intent and, decentralized command, autonomous decision-making, those kinds of things. And that's where a lot of these ideas for the standards and expectations came from, that if we can, in the beginning, lay out what our thought process is, what we want the end goal to be, then our firefighters will have a better understanding of kind of what our mindset is when we give them tasks on the fire ground. So with the commander's intent, there's a couple things that kind of tie in with that we've done along with the expectations that we'll talk about. But the last bullet there is kind of a big thing for me. This has to be done before the incident. You've got to train on these things. You've got to let your folks know what your expectations are. You can't show up on an incident and then expect them to know what you want them to do if you haven't told them. So one of the problems that we were running into in our training scenarios when we were doing the trainings where we were stretching the line and doing the mask up drills was we were taking way too long to get water in the line. So we would stretch the line, we would get nozzle uncoupling to the door, the crews would mask up, and then they would call for water, and it'd be another 30 or 45 seconds. So why were we being efficient with the stretch and being fast with our mask up times, and then we were just getting killed with how long it took to get water in the line? So we sat down and said, okay, how can we speed that process up? So what we do now with our crew is that when we stretch that line to our target and we start masking up, the pump operator has the authority to charge the line. So they see us, they're watching the nozzle firefighter, they see the nozzle firefighter has completely stretched the line, and that nozzle firefighter starts masking up, they can charge the line. Now that puts the onus on the nozzle firefighter. They have to make sure that that nozzle is closed, which is something that we should be checking in the mornings or anytime we're not pulling hose. But that this has paid big dividends for us already on a couple of fires we've had on our shift, where we're getting water much faster, which should be one of the goals of the engine company, is how fast are you getting water on the fire. So if we go around, they can't see us, maybe it's a long lay, we've gone around to the Delta side or the Charlie side, then they need to wait until we call for it because they can't see us. So, maybe we ran into troubles or delays, or if you're going to stretch dry into the second floor or third floor and they can't see you, then they need you to call for it. So that's how we operate. We talked about those expectations. We don't stretch dry a lot. So we had a fire on the east end, and I wanted to stretch dry because the first floor was clear, and my pump operator was watching the nozzle guy, and the nozzle guy started masking up on the front porch. And so the operator did what was expected, and he charged the line. So it got charged a little early, but it still ended up working out good for us. And I couldn't be mad at him because he was doing exactly what the expectation was, which was when you see the nozzle guy mask up, charge the line. It was just bad communication from my part as the officer to the nozzle guy that I wanted to stretch dry up the stairs. So the other thing with the commander's intent is, what do we do with our hand tools? So we expect our jump seat firefighter to bring the irons to the front of the building. And some of our guys will do this by stretching the line and carrying the irons. But for those that either can't do that or aren't as efficient with that, then we just task them with get the irons up towards the front of the building. So if it's open and there's not obstructions or any other things, like, they have the authority to just take the irons and toss them up towards the front porch. And then when I come around from either doing a 360 or conferring with command of what our assignment is, then I will grab those irons. Our irons right now are kept together with a marrying strap. We just bought some new ones, but we're also getting maulers. Actually, I think they were supposed to come in the other day. So I'm not sure if we're going to be putting any Velcro straps to hold those together or not, since it slides into the slot real nice. But once we get up to the porch, then we will split the tools. If there are obstructions, if there's people around, things like that, then they will just run up there and drop the irons off close to the front porch and then come back and stretch the line. And then once I get them and split them, then we'll take them from there. The other problem we ran into was we would get the irons to the front porch and then we would leave them there. So we weren't doing a lot of good with them being out front. So we'll split them. The nozzle firefighter takes the Halligan, and then I'll take the axe with me along with the hook that I have. Now, how they carry that is up to them. Some guys just hold on to it. Some guys will slide it with them. Some guys will stick it in their waistband. Some guys will stick it through their shoulder strap and let it hang off their back. How they accomplish that, I don't care, as long as they have it with them once we get inside the building. Now, we make the fire room from there. We may bury them in the walls or something like that so they're not sitting on the ground and they get lost. But at least we have those tools inside with us. All right, so we can come in and we can set standards, we can set expectations, and you can do those things for yourself. And the only person you have to lead then is yourself. And you just have to have the discipline to come in and do those things every day or every incident, et cetera. But if you're a company officer or if you're in that leadership role, then you have got to get your crew to buy into these things, because not every person that you run with on your assigned volunteer night, or that you rotate with on your part-time staff, or that you work every day with on a career staff are going to be as into the job as you are. So you have to get them to buy in, and you do that by explaining that why. Why are these things important? Why do they need to be done? If we come in and we just tell people, you're going to do these standards because I said so, they're going to push back on that. So you have to get them to buy in. You create that buy-in by having a vision and a plan on how to get there, which involves setting goals. And your goals should have, those objectives with them of how you're going to reach it. And then you sell your vision to your crew and the type of culture that you want to create. And if you're starting from scratch, this may only be a handful of people. You may only reach out to your rockstar employees and get them to buy in on this first. And then once the other people see that they're starting to buy in, then you can expand this. Then after you've set your vision, then you establish the standards, you put out the expectations, and then you have to train on these frequently. So here are some of the ways that I've experienced getting some of my guys to buy into this vision. Probably the most important one has been these one-on-one meetings that I do. This is something I'm currently in the process of. We just had some shift transfers, so I got pushed back a little bit. But I meet with each of my guys. I have 7 guys that are my direct report at my station. And I sit down and I meet with each of them. I try to do it in January. And we talk for about an hour, hour and a half. And you guys can see the list there that we talk about. I get to know them on a personal level. I got this idea from the book It's Your Ship by Michael Abershoff. He was a Navy captain and took a boat crew and of like 400 personnel and went from, the lowest rankings and all their scalable items to the best. And one of the things he did was he sat down and talked with every sailor on that ship and remembered the names of the spouses and children of 400 of them. So I thought if he can do 400, surely I can do 7. So I talk about their family. We talk about any work goals that they have. We talk about why they got into the fire service and what keeps them coming back to the fire service. We talk about their likes and dislikes. I ask them to give me 3 things they like and then 3 things that they dislike about our organization. And the reason I ask what they like is so that we can keep doing those things. And then I ask what they dislike. So hopefully we can change those things. And I had a guy a couple of years ago that all 3 things that he disliked when we did the follow-up meeting 6 months later, we were able to change all three things that he didn't like. So that was a huge win for us. And that got a lot of buy-in from him with me. And he was a more senior guy and had a lot of influence on some of the other personnel as well. Then I always make them tell us one thing that they can change and that I can change at our level that doesn't involve administration, it doesn't involve our shift commander or anybody else. A lot of times when you start talking about things that they dislike, you're talking about bigger global things. I don't like the way fire administration does I don't like the way fire administration does this, or I don't like, the call volume here or this or that, and things that we can't change. So we always ended on okay, how can we make this place better? Then we talk about training ideas, and then I always end it with asking what they want to see from me, if they want to see anything different. And then in the summer sometime, I will meet with all of them again, and then we'll go back and look at these things. Obviously, some things may not have changed, their family, but we'll follow up on their goal. Okay, how are we coming along with that? What kind of help can I provide you with that? A lot of firefighters will come, they have really good ideas, but they're just not sure kind of where to push or how to get that done. So as a company officer, we should be helping them get along that way. Next thing, just a general leadership principle here is just follow through with your people. If you tell them that you're going to do something, then you need to do it. You'll get guys that will bring you ideas and they need you to push it up. Even if it's a bad idea or you think there's going to be problems with that, if you tell them that you'll send it up the chain, then you need to send that up the chain. Once it goes up the chain and then your administration comes back and tells you, well, no, we're not going to do this, then you need to find out, okay, well, why? What don't you like about it? So they give you their reasons. Then you go back to that firefighter that brought the idea, and then you finish that feedback loop. You finish that communication with them. Okay, administration didn't like your idea. Here's why. How can we fix this? Can we change the things they don't like? How can we push this up the chain and address their concerns? Doing this has been tremendous to get buy-in from the guys, because they actually know that you care. And when they know that you care, they will start to buy in on some of those other maybe marginal items that they're not so sure about. So when the guys know that you care about them and you say, all right, I need you to mask up in under 20 seconds, in the early stages, they may be like, I don't think that needs to be done. Well, now they're going to be a little bit more lean into, okay, you know what, you went to bat for me, so I'm going to work hard to get this done for you. I keep a daily journal that I fill out at the end of each shift. I track where the guys ride. I track any significant calls we had, and especially if there was any lessons learned from that. We track the daily activities, who was doing what we did throughout the day, any issues that come up. And then just for my own personal reasons, myself, I track my workouts, what we lifted for the day, what we ran. I come back and I reference this when we do annual evaluations, we do awards ceremony, we nominate folks for that. This helps eliminate that recency bias when those things come up. And you can go back and reference these things when you sit down and do their annual evaluations, so that you know the good that your people are doing. You always want to try and find your people doing something right versus, always finding them doing something wrong. And the daily journals help out with that a lot. We track different trainings. We talk about mask up times, and we can kind of track and trend where our people are, how much hose you pulled. The big thing right now is that engine company hose stretch log, where you track how much hose you stretched every day, and people are doing like a 2021 challenge and trying to pull 2,000 feet of hose in a month and things like that. So those are all good things. To kind of go along with the follow through, Stephen Covey has an idea called a relational bank account that's in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And the concept is that you have a relationship with every person that you meet, and that relationship is similar to your bank account with deposits and withdrawals. So every time that you do something good for somebody, you are making a deposit into that bank account. And then every time you either do something bad or you require something of them, you're making a withdrawal from that account. So if you tell one of your employees that you'll look into something for them, or you're going to do something for them, and you're just telling them that you're going to do it just so they'll stop asking you, and you have no intention of ever following through with that or bringing it back up, and you're just hoping that they're going to forget about it, that's going to be a major withdrawal from them to you. And this is not just, fire service related. If you're talking about, okay, you're going to go meet somebody for lunch and you show up late, you're telling them that you're more important than their time. So that's another withdrawal. Withdrawals and deposits are not created equally. The experts, whoever they are in this concept, will tell you that for every withdrawal, you need to make 4 deposits to be equal. So logos, we all love logos. So if you have a travel coffee mug sitting next to you, it probably full of stickers or logos. You may have station company logos, things like that. They're around your firehouse, they're on apparatus, etc. Maybe your department doesn't have them. Maybe they won't allow you to create your own for your organization. That's okay. You can build your own. Here are an example of some of the ones that I'm involved with. Western Buckeye Training. So that's the training company that Jordan has created. He allows me to come teach with him sometimes. And, I'm wearing a Western Buckeye t-shirt right now. This is on, coffee mugs, it's on stickers, it's shirts, hats, people that have come to our trainings have requested to buy these items because they're proud to wear these shirts around because it has this logo. This one over here on the right, the 31, that's my firehouse, Station 31. It's Buccaneers Cove because Buccaneer is the Xenia High School mascot. So we already had a pirate flag on the truck to support the high school. So we just kind of built a play off of that, called it the Buccaneers Cove. And now we have this on our duty uniform that we're allowed to wear on shift. I'm on our technical rescue team at Xenia, so we created our own logo. And now this is not something that we don't wear this shirt on duty, but we're allowed to wear these shirts to trainings. We can wear them if we get called in off duty. It is a source of pride for the guys that serve on the technical rescue team. Now with this one and with this one, we've got administration's approval because it has our name on them. It says Xenia Tech Rescue Team here. So we got approval for those. But this is my company logo here. So we call ourselves Cory's Clowns. And send it is a favorite term of mine. Brad Clark, if you're familiar with him, he was very fond of saying that as well. Pretty much applies in any situation. But our crew sat down and we wanted to make a play off of it. So we said, we're going to start calling ourselves Cory's Clowns. And then we wanted that to mean something. So what that means for us is that, you're an aggressive firefighter, you're into the job, you're into doing trainings, you're into doing things right. And what we do with that, this is on t-shirts, we've got stickers, and pretty much anybody that wants a sticker or decal, we'll give to them. But if you see somebody walking around and they have a Cory's Clowns coffee mug, those are the folks that truly live this culture that we want to create with Cory's Clowns. So most of them have been a part of my crew. There are a handful of people that are just fire service wide across that I know that follow these same thought processes and ideals that we do. But if a coffee mug is something that you have to earn, and that means something for those guys that have it because it's very prideful for them. So even if your department won't allow it, they won't allow you to build your own station logos or department logos, you can build your own. You can have your own company motto. You can build those things that you can live up to. Another thing is just crew cohesiveness, bringing the crew together to get better, to bond, to get stronger. Do you hang out with the people you work with or the people that you volunteer with in your off days, or are you only seeing them at work? The more that you're hanging around with these folks, the better buy-in you're going to get, and you're going to create that better culture. So in 2020, we all know what a crap show that year was. We set that out to kind of be the year of challenges for us. So me and another guy, Scott Burrows, we set out to run a half marathon. We were going to run the Xenia half marathon. It required us to train through the winter. So last January, we're out running, 10, 12 miles to get prepped for this thing. They ultimately ended up canceling it. So we had two options. We could wait, or we could just run it on our own. So we just went out in April when it was scheduled, and we ran the thing on our own. And that was a bonding time for our crew as we prepped for that. After we ran that half marathon, there was 5 of us on our crew that did the Murph Challenge around Memorial Day. So we spent, a couple months getting prepped up for that. In July, we did what we called the Carnival of Pain, which was a spin for us off of Cory's Clowns. And at Xenia, we work a California swing shift, so we're at work every other day for 3 shifts. So we took those 3 days and we scheduled on those days various challenges. So each day started off with a 3-mile run. You had to set a hard time the first day, and then each subsequent day you had to beat the previous day's time. The workouts were personal records in bench, squat, and deadlift over the 3 days. When you weren't doing the actual lifting, you were doing other things to keep your heart rate up, push-ups, pull-ups, jump rope, etc. We did fire training exercises. We did some hose line advancements with mask ups. We did some ground ladder throws where we took every ground ladder on the aerial truck, threw it, climbed them up and down a bunch. And then the last day was VES. This was all like the second week of July when it was like 100 degrees outside. We did some brain games just to challenge us mentally, put us in a different mindset. Some of it not fire service related, some of it fire service related. We made up an escape room. We did a scavenger hunt. All of those things brought us together better and really kind of sent home that culture. Everybody that was involved in the Carnival of Pain will tell you that it was extremely tough. It was challenging, but they're 100% glad that we did it. Writing assignments, we did not have any writing assignments. I was at H-Rock down in Florida a couple of years ago, I think 2017, and was listening to Mike Lombardo talk, and he was talking about writing assignments, and it just kind of clicked with me of like how I thought we could make those work in our organization. As a company officer, I kind of had a mindset of how I wanted to operate on these specific call types and what we were going to do. And so I thought, well, we're pretty much doing the same thing. So why am I having to communicate this with the guys each time we get the call? I should just write them down and give them to them. And then just kind of hit me like a brick, like, hey, you idiot, that's what writing assignments are. So we sat down as a crew. We developed 6 different writing assignments for the incidents you see listed there. And these lay out what we expect our crews to do for these incident types, as well as tool assignments. So one example, this is our structure fire, first incident on the scene. So a little bit about apparatus placement. This again is not a policy. This is just kind of a best practice kind of thing. So we generally try and pull past so we get that 3-sided view, but sometimes it's better to stop short. So we mentioned that in there. Consider location of the hydrants. Consider other avenues that the other apparatus will be coming in from. Generally, the tactical assignment's going to be fire tech, but there could be times where that's not the case. There's what we expect at each position, what we expect the driver to do, what we expect the officer to do, what tools they're to carry, and what we expect firefighter 1 to do. Occasionally, we will get a 4th person on the engine. So on all of these, we wrote that spot in, and it always wrote if staffed, and it is generally just to kind of help firefighter 1 and make their job a little easier. If you're interested in looking in these writing assignments or anything we talked about, I will share anything that I've got. That is not a problem. My contact info is at the end. So if you want to see the rest of these, you can reach out and I will gladly share anything. We took these writing assignments. These started out as a C-shift station 1 thing. I met with a guy who was my captain at the time, and he said, let's push these out to both stations. So the other station got involved. We ran these for about a year, made some tweaks to them at the shift level, and then pushed it over to our fire training captain, and he pushed them department-wide. So this is another example of taking that culture. We started small, and now we've pushed this organization-wide, and these are the expectations no matter what shift or station that you're on. I'm an eternal optimistic kind of guy. So this is my big 3: show up to work with a positive attitude, never walk past a problem and find a positive in a bad situation. So I expect, when my guys come to work, that if they had issues at home, they got things going on, they leave it at the door. We come to work, we're there for the citizens. We need to be in that right mindset. If you tuned into Jeffrey's chat last month, he hit on that a lot. And I am on board with that. We've got to be in that right mindset of why we're there. Don't walk past a problem. That's big for me. You come in and you see something is dirty, you clean it. You see something's out of place, you fix it. We shouldn't be walking past things and just passing that problem on to somebody else. Finding a positive in a bad situation, that one is the toughest of these 3 things to do. But we've got to be able to move on, right? If you make a mistake, you've got to admit it, own it, learn from it, and move on. And find those positives is how you can move on from those things. So as we kind of wrap this up here, if you start building standards, you lay out expectations, again, regardless if you're the company officer or you're just doing this for yourself, you explain the why of why you want these things done. You explain the why behind the benefit of doing these things. It's going to eliminate this confusion. It's going to prevent time delays from coming in. You got to frequently train on these things. Okay, so we can't just come out, set the stand that you're going to mask up in under 20 seconds and just line in under 60 seconds and mask up in under 30 after that, without practicing that. FDTN has a saying that, be brilliant at the basics. And I love that. We get too advanced at times when we want to do things and we can't stretch our standard cross lay. So hit those basics hard. These are all basic items that we've talked about tonight. Train on them frequently. Be open to feedback and be prepared for criticism. If you're trying to make change in the fire service, there's going to be people that are pushing back on you, and you have to have the persistence to persevere regardless of that. You need to keep an inner circle of people. I keep 2 small inner circles, one of some close friends of mine. One of them's in the fire service, one is not. And then I keep an inner circle of guys at work. And these are the guys that if you got a problem, you can go talk to, or if you need someone to shoot you straight and honest, then you go talk to them. Especially if you're a company officer, a chief officer, a lot of times people are afraid to tell you the truth. So you need to have a small group of people, 2 or 3 generally at most, that will give you the honest answer or give you the answer that you need to hear, not the one that you want to hear. So if you're getting that criticism, you go talk to those folks and get their opinion. And if they think you're on the right track and you've got 3 or 4 of you that think you're on the right track, you're probably doing the right thing and the criticism is unfounded. I saw a quote from Dabo Sweeney that said, never accept criticism from somebody you wouldn't go to for advice. And that's probably pretty good advice in and of itself. But don't be unwilling to make changes either. If someone comes to you and they present you with an idea that's better, don't be too stubborn that because you thought of something that they can improve upon it. So be open to that feedback as well. Last couple slides here are just some pictures to kind of drive home some of the points that we've been talking about and to show you the culture of the crew that I get fortunate enough to go to work with every day. This was Christmas Day there at the end of 2020. It's snowing outside, it's cold, and that's one of our rookies. He's got about 6 months on the job, or 6 months with us, excuse me. And he wants to get faster with stretching and masking up and forcing the door. So he took the engine out on his own. He set the force entry door up. Now the force entry door was inside the building, but he took the engine out. He stretched this line out across in the snow into the building, went through the whole process by himself. And he said, I want to try and do this while carrying the set of irons as well. So that's the culture that we're pushing. This is one single firefighter that says, I want to get better. Didn't care that it was a holiday. Didn't care that it was snowing outside. Didn't care it was cold. This was like right before supper time. Like none of that mattered to him. He said, I want to get out and I want to do this. And he went out and did it. This was a fire we had back in the summer. We had this house has had a couple additions to it. It's a pretty long house, and they added an addition here. Then they added those little breezeway back to this 2-story structure here. So there's a positive and a room for improvement from this fire. Our pump operator, this was the first time that he was pumping and we had a fire when we put into play the charge the line when you can see us masking up. And as soon as that nozzle hit the ground and the nozzle firefighter started masking up, it felt like we instantly had water. And it was extremely beneficial for us at this fire because this addition here, the fire started in the kitchen and it was coming out these windows. You can see it was starting to go up to the second floor here, starting to go up a little bit here. There's a stairwell right here that goes up to the second floor. It had come through there. It was starting to get into this breezeway and it had come out onto this front porch. And fire was blowing out underneath this porch roof here and, threatening to go towards the front of the house. So since we had water so fast, I didn't have to do a 360 because our shift commander got there first and had done it. So I just chatted with him as we were stretching the line, and we identified when we pulled in, there was no fire here yet. So we said, we're going to take the line here. We're going to stop the fire there. So we stretched it here. As soon as he lays it down, we get water in no time. I'm masked up, ready to go. So I'm able to throw, as I, am bleeding the line, right? I'm checking to make sure it's got the right pressure and the gallons per minute in addition to bleeding air out of it. I throw that little bit of water up on this siding just to knock it down to try and prevent it from getting in this window. And then as the nozzle firefighter is continuing to mask up, I throw some water and just push this porch fire out back into the house. So within 20 seconds, he's masked up. I hand the line off to him and we go inside and we just, start flowing and moving into the building. Now, where our area for improvement is when we go out and we train and we're stretching lines, we generally train on that in our parking lot. And we want to get that nozzle and coupling in line with the door. So the problem we ran into here is we stretched it just a little bit too far past the target door. You can see how wide this hose swings out. And when we went in, there's like 3 steps to go up to the porch. It goes in, we had to turn right, and then we had to make another 90-degree turn. There's like 2 steps that go down, and then we had to make a 180-degree turn to get over here to where the fire was. So my initial thought process was, I'm going to sit in this doorway and I'm just going to pull hose with me as he gets around the corners. Well, it got caught on this little piece of concrete right here, and I could not pull it because it was just too much friction and based on the angle. So I had to leave. There was a power line arcing down right here. So I had to come down, I have to duck underneath that. There's other crews trying to come in as now I'm coming out, and I had to get out here and pull this line over. While I was doing that, I did not hear the nozzle firefighter come down these 2 steps very rapidly and holler back, hey, there's 2 steps. I found them when I went very rapidly down those 2 steps a couple seconds later. So it was not necessarily a huge delay, but we could have prevented that if we would have lined it up a little bit better on that initial stretch. The fire itself was insignificant. It was in a chimney. The guy had like a stuffed animal sitting on the hearth, and it sparked and caught that stuffed animal part. It was mostly smoke. Why I put this picture in here is when I was talking about masking up earlier and talking about setting that standard to be able to do it in various ways and conditions. We had a medic crew inside on this fire because they got there first. We were all at Station 1 for training. This was on their district, the other district on the far west side of town. So the medic crew got there first, and they went in to investigate. By the time we got there, the smoke was getting worse. So this fire, you can see it's a pretty short setback. As the nozzle firefighter was stretching the line, I masked up while walking up to the building. So it's not necessarily a huge, time saving, but how long is it going to take me to get out the truck and walk up there, 5, 8 seconds, whatever. I was able to shave that off because I masked up while I was walking. So that I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't have practiced that before. So think of those things as you're talking about these standards and expectations. And then this, can drive home that why as well. All right. That is our last picture. This is not our normal crew. This was the live burn day of our company officer academy. So we had a boatload of people. We caught a vacant house on fire in the east end of town. But it's a cool picture to kind of end it here. So hopefully you got something out of the lecture here. Hopefully you can take some of this information. Like I said, you're going to kind of have to tweak it for your specific organization that you work for with your staffing, your jurisdiction, and start building that culture that you want for your company. You don't have to wait on somebody else to do it. Don't try and get this to come from the top down with the chiefs. Start this from the bottom up. Here's some of our contact info. There's Jordan's email at Western Buckeye. Western Buckeye offers a host of classes, props, etc. So reach out to Jordan if you're interested in any of those items coming out. You can reach out to me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And like I said, if there's something I've got that you're interested in, I will certainly share it with you. That is not a problem for me. All right. And with that, we'll, Caleb, anybody got any questions or anything they want to talk about?